Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? Hopefully well. My name is Kent. The channel is Bitcoin Artificial Intelligence. I'm a little bit earlier than I usually shoot videos, but I thought I'd come down and shoot one around the pier, the Oceanside Pier, because it's a very popular place this time of year. A lot of people down here. I probably have people in the background that will be doing things in my video that I normally don't see until after I watch the video. So yeah, it's a pretty busy place time of year too. I'll let you see behind me. There's something going on over here. Yeah, some sort of event. Maybe I can walk over there and show it during the video. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about consciousness tonight. And the reason I want to talk about consciousness is because so much is talked about as far as artificial intelligence, and if it's sentient or conscious, and does it think like a human being? Does it have the same attributes human beings have? And a lot of people think that it does. And I've been thinking about this pretty heavily because I had an experience a few years ago. I've talked about once on this channel because it happened in 2020, and it's about actually, it's probably, I would consider a near-death experience, although I don't have anything to reveal as far as seeing God or going down any kind of bright tunnel or going down seeing a bright light or anything like that. But I did have a pretty unique experience, an experience that I still think about almost every day, that tells me consciousness does survive our bodies. I think of our bodies as like a headset, a gaming headset, and once we get outside of this gaming headset, we still have a consciousness that is beyond our physical dimensions, our physical body. And the experience I had was in 2020. And what happened to me was that I had atrial fibrillation, which means I had an irregular heartbeat. And I had this for a long time, since 2012. And I would go in through times of having AFib, and then I would go through times where they have to shock my heart back. They'd use the paddles and they'd shock me back, and I'd go into a sinus rhythm for a while. But inevitably I would pop back out. So something would happen. Either I would get stressed out or something would happen and it would go back out. So I was dealing with this for a number of years. Well, along comes COVID. And I hope that music doesn't kill my video. But anyway, along comes COVID. 2020. Hospitals are all kind of shut down, or they're operating in kind of COVID mode, which means nobody's being treated except those people that had COVID. Everybody else was kind of put on hold, or they're in the background. They're actually kind of dismissed from the hospital, because if it was an emergency or COVID, they were just not even treating people. They weren't doing elective surgeries, only emergency surgeries or COVID. So my surgeon, my cardiologist, since he was slow at that time, and he thought, wow, this is a good time to fix your heart, we'll get you in and we'll do a procedure called ablation, which what ablation does is they go into the heart with up your vein to the heart, and they actually cauterize parts of your heart that are sparking and causing your heart to have an irregular rhythm. So it seems like a pretty simple thing. So I go in 1 week, and the hospital is completely dysfunctional. That's how the surgeon, my cardiologist, described the hospital as completely dysfunctional, because they had just let about 250 people go. It was Palmer Hospital here in San Diego, or actually North County, San Diego, kind of Vista, Oceanside area. But anyway, I went in and they put me to sleep. It was, a long procedure for me to get to the operating room. They went in, they wheel you into a little hallway. They actually start giving you the sedation. They ask you questions. You talk to the anesthesiologist. Of course, I talked to the anesthesiologist, and she was actually doing a TikTok. Kind of funny at the time, I remember doing a TikTok. But I remember the whole thing, going right into the emergency room, being held up there in the hallway for a while, then having them talk to me. And I actually remember going into the operating room, being laid out on the table, having them set up all this, the instruments that they were going to need to do this procedure. I remember it all very vividly, very well. Well, about an hour, probably about an hour or two later, they woke me up. Well, actually, I got woke up, and it just seemed like it was pretty quick to me. And I asked the physician, I said, what happened? He says, I'm sorry. He said, we weren't able to complete the procedure because the machinery that we were using wasn't working. So it was actually a pretty dangerous situation. I actually ran the thing up my vein, and then when he got there, the thing that actually did the cauterization or cauterizing your heart wasn't working, so he wasn't able to finish the procedure. And he was really mad. He was like, you got to write the hospital about this. I'll help you. I'll back you. We'll write a letter and we'll complain to the hospital about how their equipment wasn't working. So I just said, okay. And he said, well, fine, let's do it next week. He said, I'm free next week. We'll come back next Friday. You can come in Friday morning and we'll get this thing done. So I had just gone through it. I thought it was like a pretty simple surgery, and I wasn't too concerned. So the next Friday, I went up there real early in the morning, like 6:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. They want you there early in the morning. Parked my car, went in to do the same thing, expecting to be popped out of there in a few hours and be dismissed later in the day. Well, that didn't work out so well. I went up there, we did the surgery, and what was told to me is that the surgeon, Dr. Posh, was my cardiologist out of Oceanside, California. He said, they took me out, he said, the procedure went fine, you went to the post-operating room, and I told the guy in the post-operating room, keep an eye on this guy. We just got him out of surgery, he did fine, procedure went very well, but just make sure he wakes up. Well, Dr. Posh tells me about 45 minutes later, he's actually ready to leave the hospital, and he usually doesn't do this because he has other things going on, but since it's COVID and it's kind of like his schedule's a little messed up, he just popped back into the emergency room just to make sure that I had, was doing well, and maybe even to talk to me a little bit. But what he found out is they had wheeled me over to the side and nobody was watching me, and I literally was there for 45 minutes after he'd done the procedure, and I had literally never woke up, and he thought I was probably brain dead. His opinion of what happened to me was that he was probably, based on the way I looked, I was ashen gray, I didn't have a good look at all, and he thought I was brain dead. He immediately thought that they should do a brain scan on me to see if there was any brain activity. Called my wife and kids and said, we're worried about your husband or your father. He got him out of surgery, but he didn't wake up, and we don't know. So they had to wait a whole other day before they could actually run the brain scan to find out if I was alive or not. So, of course, I don't remember any of this. So the only thing I remember after I don't even remember going to the surgery. That's how much my memory got wiped out from this. I don't remember anything. The only thing I remember is I'm in a room overhead, above everybody, and there's 4 people, and I'm on the table laying flat on my back, and the doctor's over me, and he's pulling on the tube because they had run a tube down my throat to try and, of course, keep me alive. What do they call that when they run a tube down your throat? Intubate you. So they ran a tube down my throat. Of course, that's how they were keeping me alive. And he was pulling on that tube, trying to get it out of my throat. And I'm observing this from overhead. 4 people. There was the doctor and 3 nurses standing around me, and they're pulling the tube out of my throat. And he was struggling with this tube, and he was swearing. He was cussing, and he was really upset, and he was trying to pull the tube out, and it wasn't going well. And as he was pulling the tube out, I had actually drank some orange juice before going into surgery. They tell you not to drink anything or eat anything before going to surgery. Of course, I'm always the person to violate the rule. So as he's pulling out the tube, some of the fluid starts coming out, and he's really upset about that, because not only is he's upset because he can't get the tube out, he's upset because all this fluid's coming out with the tube. So he is swearing up. He is swearing and cussing like a sailor. I mean, he's saying every G, D, mother, effing everything in the world, and he's swearing while he's doing this, and I'm over the top of him and the 3 nurses watching this, observing all that's going on. And I'm completely like a spectator. And I'm not in pain, I'm not upset, I'm not nervous, I'm not panicky, I'm just completely at ease and comfortable observing everything below me. And the reason I know that I was overhead is because one of the things, I was paying attention to everything very closely. It was all very, very interesting to me, more interesting than anything. I mean, I'm not even sure if I knew that was me on the bed. I didn't have that feeling, but just the whole scene was just so hypnotic to me that I was watching this all very closely. And I was listening to the doctor, and of course he was very upset, and of course they looked like they were all very concerned. And I remember thinking to myself, how you doing? It's going this way. So yeah, that's the back. We're doing it on a back camera. Yeah, thanks, I appreciate it. So I'm watching everything from overhead, and I'm realizing that he's upset and he's pissed off because things aren't going well, and he's not happy about the fluid coming out, and he's not happy about any of this other stuff. But I noticed something that was really kind of interesting to me, and the fact that he had his tie stuck between two buttons on his shirt. So he had a shirt on, he had a tie on, and the tie was stuck between the two buttons on his shirt. Instead of hanging free like it usually hangs, it was stuck between the two buttons in his shirt. And I remember looking at that very interestingly. It was very interesting to me, why he would stick his tie in between the two buttons on his shirt. I'm thinking to myself, why does he have a tie on if he's just going to do that? So that to me told me that I wasn't laying flat looking up, that I was from the top looking down, because that was something very interesting to me. The other thing is they worked on me for quite a while. During this time I was observing all their actions and watching them very closely, and just very, like I say, like a spectator, almost like someone watching a football game or basketball game from the stands. I was there and I was watching it, but I knew that I wasn't really a part of it. I was just observing it. And the really weird thing about it to me was I was really upset, or I wasn't upset, but I was very concerned that the doctor was mad at me. I was thinking, I hope he's not mad at me. So I must have known it was me, because he was swearing so much and cussing, and he was so upset. And I thought maybe he'd be mad. And I don't know if I was thinking he was mad because someone was watching, like me overhead, or if I thought he would be mad because of me laying on the table. I couldn't quite discern that. I can't discern that at this point. I don't know. But all I know is I just was overhead watching him very closely. And, like I say, they worked on me for quite a while. And they got the tube out. And then the next thing I know is I'm laying there and I'm in my body, and I open my eyes. And I immediately am in complete panic because I can't move anything. I can't move my finger, I can't move my toe, I can barely open my eyes. My eyes were closed, and that's another reason why I know I had to be overhead, because I remember opening my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, I immediately realized I was paralyzed from head to toe and could not move anything, not even twitching. And I was panicked at that point because I thought I was paralyzed from head to toe. And they assured me, they saw the panic in my eyes and the fear in my expression and everything like that. And they told me, they said, hey, you're paralyzed, it's temporary, it will wear off. We had to do this because of the condition you were in. We had to put you in this paralysis, but it will wear off. And it did. In 15, 20 minutes, I got back all my movement. But at that time, when I was laying there, I didn't have it. So I went from being completely calm, observing the whole situation, to being back in my body, and then being completely terrorized because of the fact I couldn't move. I couldn't even it was complete. Whatever they do to paralyze you when you're in a coma or when you're in a state that I was in, that works pretty well, because it just completely paralyzed me. So I've been out they told me that it's like Monday or Tuesday. I went in Friday morning. I should have been out Friday afternoon. All I know is the weekend's passed and we're into the next week, and I know something bad happened. I don't know what happened, but I just know something bad happened, because I'm bad, So they wheeled me back to my room, and of course, I can't get out of bed, I can't move. When you lay paralyzed for 3 days and you don't move anything, you don't realize how quickly your body deteriorates. And my body deteriorated to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't walk, I couldn't get up, I had to be helped for everything. I gotta make sure, hold on, I wanna make sure I'm recording. Yeah, I'm recording. Okay, so I have nothing. I can't get it. I have to have people help me to the bathroom. I have to have people, sponge bath me. I have to do everything's being done for me. I can't do anything. I didn't realize how quickly. I walked in a fully functional person and laid there for a week, unable to even, take care of my most basic needs. So while I was in the hospital, healing up, one of the people that had been there when I checked in, a nice guy, who was a nurse, he came up and he had my stuff. I had my stuff down in the emergency room, and when I didn't wake up, they didn't realize that I'd be up in the hospital, so they didn't bring my stuff up to me. So he brought my stuff up to me, had my shoes and stuff in it. And he looked at me and he goes, the first thing he said to me was really funny. He goes, you're way too young for this kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, I am. And he said, do you know what happened to you? And I said, no. And he said, looked at me real shockingly. He says, you don't remember anything? And I said, no, I don't remember anything. I said, can you tell me what happened? And he just said, he kind of like, he wanted to talk to me, but he didn't really want to talk to me. It's almost like if I got spared, you know, the misery that I had to go through, I don't think he was going to tell me. So anyway, he didn't say too much, but I could just tell by the look on his face that he was really puzzled that I didn't remember it. And he was kind of puzzled by the fact that I had gone through so much and I was still probably alive. So he was the first person. Next person came in to me was my doctor. And I asked my doctor, I said, what happened? And he came in and he was really upset. He said, I told him in the emergency room to wake you up and he didn't do it. So he was like, this is terrible, it's horrible, you got to do something about it and everything. And he said, make an appointment with me next Monday and I'll go through it with you, what happened. And he says, you're lucky to be alive. So I was really looking forward to the next appointment so I could find out what really happened. I'll fast forward to tell you what happened. What happened when I went in, he asked me, he goes, are you okay? I said, I'm okay. He said, do you think you have any permanent damage? I said, I don't think so. And then he just quit. And he says, okay, if everything. I said, well, tell me what happened. And at that point, I think the liability part of his mind kicked in and he didn't want to say anything that would maybe cause me to, cause a lawsuit or something, sue the hospital, even sue him. So right away, then he just thought, hey, if the guy's okay and he doesn't remember anything, no harm, no foul. We'll just let it go. So that's exactly what they did. They just didn't tell me anything. But I had some residual effects from this out-of-body experience that I had. And one of the residual effects is that after I came out of this state that I was in, and I was in my room after I'd already woke up, I was back in my body, and I was in my room, I realized that I had some abilities I didn't know I used to have. And I got to get away from the music or I'll demonetize the video. So I had some abilities that I didn't have before. One of the abilities I had was I was able to see things and go around the hospital, without leaving my room. So in other words, I was able to mentally leave my room, go around the hospital and check things out. And I vividly remember some of the things I was going through at that time. One of the things was that it was COVID and nobody was allowed to come into the hospital. My family couldn't come see me, nobody could come see me. And there was a guy in a room a couple rooms away from me, and he was dying. He was dying of cancer, and they made an exception for his son to come up into the room and see him. And for whatever reason, I was able to be in the room with him at that time. Even though I physically was in my own room, I was able to kind of be a spirit and move around the hospital. And I was over in that guy's room. And he and his son were there, and they were talking. And of course, I was just extremely sad for me because they didn't really talk too much, but it was kind of like they knew that was the last time they were going to see each other. He was going to die. And of course, the son was sad about his father passing away, and the father was sad about not seeing his son again. So I was there in the room with them, and I was observing all this, and it was making me sad. And of course, they were sad and everything like that. But the fact I was able to travel around the hospital, spiritually, and be detached from my body was just really unusual. It was kind of crazy the way I was able to do that. The other thing I was able to do is I was able to listen to the things that the nurses were able to say. So I was in my room, and the nurses would be talking out in their nurses station, which was quite a ways from my room. And I listened to everything they said. They talked about me and my condition. They even actually went online to look at the address we lived in. They wanted to kind of figure out if I had stairs in the house, because if they weren't going to be able to release me if there were stairs in the house, because I couldn't walk. So they were doing all this, and they were researching the home to see if I could go back and all this other stuff. So all this stuff I was able to hear and see without actually being. So I had that kind of a detachment from my body for a period of time, even though I was still intact and physically, mentally there, but I was able to to move around without being in my body. So I know this all sounds really weird, and a lot of people will think it's strange, and I'm trying to tell this as honestly as I can tell you, because I know a lot of people do these near-death experiences, and sometimes they seem a little fake and a little phony, and a lot of people base their belief system on what people say in these kind of videos. So I don't want to mislead anybody, or I don't want anybody to have any misconceptions, and this is not a religious talk. This isn't about God. This isn't about Jesus. This isn't about any of those things. Although, I am a believer, but I never had a contact with Jesus. I never had a contact with God. I never went through a tunnel. I never saw a light. Things that people normally see and do, they didn't apply to me. I just got physically disconnected from my body. My spirit, my consciousness was outside my body. And I was able to travel around for a while. And then when I went home, even after I went home, I had some other unique experiences. One was I was able to feel tremors in the earth. So I'd be sitting in the room at home after I was recovering, and I would feel the earth shake. And I would be like, wow, that is crazy. The earth shakes. It really shakes. It's like it has movement. It's kind of alive. And that would freak me out, and I would look at everybody else because, don't you feel that? Don't you feel that movement in the earth? And everybody's looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I had that for quite some time. For, probably a good month after this happened, I was having a lot of experiences like feeling the earth move, being able to be around, hear people say things without actually being there, knowing things intuitively without actually, knowing them. I just didn't know any of that. I was just able to interpret and know things. The other thing, and probably the weirdest thing that I had, is I kind of had an ability to see people and feel that they weren't necessarily human. So I know people are going to think this is crazy, but I really don't care at this point in my life, and of course this point in time, because we are coming into an age where there's going to be some crazy stuff happen. So I don't really care what people think or what I do or what I say. I'm just telling you the way it is. But I actually had the ability to look at someone, and by looking at him, tell if they were a real person. Now, I don't know what else they would have been, maybe alien or something like that, but non-spiritual person. So I didn't see any of these people firsthand, but I saw them on TV, and I saw people that I really felt, I had a sense that were not physically or spiritually like me, or physically, spiritually of the same composition, same soul, spirit, and things I was. That they seemed different, almost alien-like, and some people call them, I don't know what you want to call them. I've heard people refer to people like that as lizard people or something like that. People say that about the guy that has Facebook. They say he's a lizard man. But I had that kind of a sense of feeling that some people weren't really, true human beings. And I had that for a while. And of course, it took about 30 days for this all to go away. In about 30 days, then I was just right back to where I am today. I was 100% back in my body. All the extra abilities I had were completely gone. I didn't have any extra spiritual. I didn't have dreams. I didn't have any kind of things go on in my brain or things like that. It was completely over with. The only thing that really stayed with me was my understanding of what happened. I still to this day wonder what happened, and I think about it all the time. I think was that a possibility that I was just, under drugs? They had given me so much medication to try to get me through that period of time. Maybe I was semi-conscious and imagined that I was floating over the top of the bed, and I really wasn't, and it was just all imagined and things like that. But I keep coming up with little things that I remember that make me think that wasn't the case, that it was actually spiritually that I was disconnected from my body. And one of the reasons why I think I was is because, first of all, how real the experience was when I was outside of my body. I felt more in tune and more real than almost any other time. And the other thing too is the little minute things that I remembered. I remember when I woke up, I remembered the doctor, and I remembered the tie, and I remembered all these things. And I remember as soon as I woke up, I remember who the doctor was. I remember what he looked like. He was, an elderly guy, and he was, I kind of remember what he looked like a little bit, although I never saw him. And the reason I never saw him is because he was standing over the top of my head. And as soon as I awoke, I couldn't move my head. I couldn't even move my eyes. I could barely open my eyes. I was just fixed to the ceiling. And I never saw the doctor. I didn't know what he looked like because I couldn't move. But I know what he looked like, and I know who he was. And I know who the doctor was, because I never met this guy. This is not a doctor that I had normally. He wasn't my normal cardiologist. He was a guy that just brought me back into the world after I was in that state of being in, in a coma, more or less. He was the guy, and I know, like I said, I could see him, and I know exactly what he looks like, and I know who he is, although I was not able to physically see him. And I know, later on, by reading through the notes, that this guy was the guy that brought me back, and was able to see what he looked like on the internet and everything. So it was crazy that I knew what the guy looked like, even though I wasn't awake, and I couldn't move my head after I woke up. So how would I know that? How would I know who this doctor was without ever being able to see him? Because like I say, when he got the tube out and I sparked and come back to life, he walked out. He just immediately left the room and left me to the nurses, and I never saw him. He walked straight back behind me, and I never knew what he looked like. I would like to talk to him someday, because I'd like to ask him, what happened, because I remember what happened in the room that day. I'd like to ask him if those were the things that really happened. Was he swearing? Was he cussing? Was he having a hard time getting the tube out of my throat? All these things that I can remember, and everything like that. So crazy thing. Like I say, it's interesting subject. I just telling it like it is. I told this story a couple years ago. If you want to go back and watch the actual full story, I think it was around 2020, and I think it was around April or May. I think the surgery was in April, May, and I actually did a video right after I got out of the hospital, a week or two after I got out of the hospital. You can see me, I've got a little bit of a scruffy beard. In fact, another interesting thing is I'd never grown a beard in my entire life. I didn't even think I had facial hair. And for the week I was up in the hospital, I actually started to grow a little bit of hair on my face, and all of a sudden I realized, wow, I have a beard, which was another interesting story from that whole thing. And I shaved it off once since that time, but the first time I had a beard is when I turned 60 years old and was in the hospital for a major surgery that almost killed me. So anyway, not much on AI tonight, not much on Bitcoin, but just an interesting side note that I do think we are conscious. I think our conscious survives our bodies. I do think we live beyond this headset that we're in. All these limitations and physical limitations, and of course, most of the problems we have in this world are due to the fact that we're carrying around this meat suit that we wear. We got to feed it, we got to exercise it, we got to take care of it, we got to have money, we got to have a house, we got to have all these things, and it causes us a lot of pain. It hurts. When I went through this heart surgery, it was terribly painful. And then a year later, I had to go through bypass surgery, which was even worse. I mean, I didn't have the near-death experience like I did with the ablation, but I went through a heart bypass surgery. They told me, you're going to be out of commission for about 6 months. I said, no way. I'm not going to be in bed for 6 months over that thing. I did a video on that too. I actually did a video on kratom, because that kratom helped me get off the opiates that I was on while I was trying to get out of the surgery, or out of the pain after the surgery. So yeah, I think we are in a meat suit. We do get out of this meat suit, and I think when we do get out of the meat suit, we have a lot more. We're kind of like we're liberated from our body, because our body does carry a lot of difficulties and pain, and it is a hardship to be living in a body. We age. I'm 63 years old, and when I don't feel like I did when I was 23 years old. I assure you. And anybody my age can tell you that all you do as you get older is you just feel worse, and it's harder and harder to stay in shape, and it's harder and harder, to be active and do all the things that you wanted to do, and that all comes with age. So it doesn't get better as we get older. So it is a liability to be in a human body. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.